the Iranian motives in this war. What the Iranians intend to do is to blow up the existing paradigm. What is the paradigm? Caging Iran, not caging it in the way in which Hamas is caged in Gaza with physical fences and drones flying overhead. Iran is completely surrounded by US military bases. It has been sanctioned since embassy hostage siege. It is tariff. It is besieged economically. It has UN sanctions against it. It is culturally ostracized, politically isolated. And the Iranians intend to break out of this imprisonment, this containment. And they're going to do it using Hormuz, because the reality is that Hormuz, if it's shut for another 3 weeks or so, will exert huge pain on the United States and more so on Europe. And what the Iranians are doing is not just, and you mentioned that, but then there are all these other elements. I mean, it's really sort of a reflection of what the Chinese did. When Trump put 155% tariffs on China, President Xi, he said, well, actually, we are not going to be exporting our rare earths and some of those metals and precious metals and things you need for your military supply lines and for your tech products. And we're putting restrictions on those, and suddenly things changed. Well, Iran, if you like, is following the same path because the supply lines of Europe and America depend on things like helium, sulfuric acid, all the things that pass through Hormuz. They haven't closed Hormuz completely. They've closed it from the moment that Trump said, no, Lebanon was not involved in this process. And that went against their 10-point plan. But the week before, about 22 tankers were going, and they were paying a toll, a fee. I don't see why it's such a problem. If you want to sail the Red Sea, I mean, you have to pay Egypt a toll because you have to use the Suez Straits, if you like, at the other end. So it's not something that is so novel and rare. So they are going to continue, and the point of that is the time limit is short. The Iranians only have to keep Hormuz shut or tightly controlled for 3 weeks, and then the pain is going to be evident in stock markets and in tech company share prices and in things even like food is going to start to be reflected. And so, yes, they are going to inflict pain, and the pain is intended to say to President Trump, you have to bite the bullet. We are going to leave this containment. We are going to break the paradigm, and you have no ability to stop it because we control Hormuz. You're very welcome to try and open it. I mean, they're literally offering the United States to say, come and bring your troops. You're welcome. Come into our parlor. Land on Iran on the north side of Hormuz and find out what the geography is like there. They are in a strong position. And as I said to you, actually, they're in a stronger position than after the 12-day war, not only because their missiles are largely intact, but also they haven't suffered the same casualties as in the 12-day war because they emptied all of the buildings. All of the buildings were emptied, all of the public buildings, only the hospitals remained. And of course, Israel has been bombing some of those. But I mean, everything was empty. I think they say something, they probably had 2,000 to 3,000 deaths. I mean, no one really knows because people are under rubble and things. But it's not, it's not being catastrophic as is being presented by people on certain news channels. as being, oh, they've been suffered, their military has been degraded, they've suffered. Well, you heard Admiral Cooper saying all that, that we've prevented them. All of that is just lies. And the problem is that, it makes it so much more difficult for the United States to look truth in the eye and say, how do we get out of this mess? How are we going to get out of it? And the answer is that they have to talk seriously with Iran about ending. We fall into it. It seems, oh, yes, more sanctions. We'll have to have inspections about missiles. We'll have to have the whole paraphernalia of containment and of siege. And Iran is not going to accept, if you like, to end up like Syria. More and more tariffs, more and more economic siege, slowly eroding the well-being of the Iranian people, so that people can't lead a normal life. And they are determined to break the paradigm. And if that means causing chaos on markets, so be it. That's how they regard it. I mean,
so let me ask you. So there's about to be, at least they're scheduled, talks in Islamabad starting tomorrow. What do you expect to happen? And as I ask that question, let me show you what the vice president, who's going to be leading the American delegation, this is what he said just a little bit ago on his way to that meeting.
We're looking forward to the negotiation. I think it's going to be positive. We'll, of course, see, as the President of the United States said, if the Iranians are willing to negotiate in good faith, we're certainly willing to extend the open hand. If they're going to try to play us, then they're going to find that the negotiating team is not that receptive. So we're going to try to have a positive negotiation. The President has gave us some pretty clear guidelines, and we're going to see.
And let me just ask, just right off the top, we're asking the Iranians to negotiate in good faith. Now, our track record in the last 9 or so months is about as heinous as it can be on good faith negotiations. I mean, let's just start with that. How is that going to set the stage for whatever may happen in Islamabad?
No, well, I mean, look, I think that the vice president has been working quite hard against, if you like, the grain of the White House to try and get some sort of talk started. Not with a great deal of success, I think. But I mean, I believe he was up all night last Friday trying to get something started. So, I mean, but he starts off by saying they've got to negotiate with us. They still don't get it. The 10 points are not, the basis for negotiation on nuclear things and this and that. These are, as Iran says, preconditions for negotiations on a lasting ceasefire, which means an end to conflict. If you like, make a comparison with Russia and what was the situation within Russia. Witkoff and Kushner went there to hold negotiations. There was endless toing and froing and papers circulating amongst the Europeans, which were never shown to the Russians. And then the Russians said, we're not having a ceasefire. We want security and an end to this conflict. We want a full solution. We want to know where the boundaries between the sphere of influence of NATO lies and where our sphere of interest exceeds. What is the boundary between these two things? And we need the security architecture to maintain it. And that is what the Russians are saying. And it's rather parallel to what the Iranians are saying. They're saying we've had it with, just as Russia has been, if you like, unable to achieve a security understanding with the United States because the Europeans keep pressing or insisting that their proxy Ukraine continue the war against Russia, so there can be no solution in Russia. And here we have Iran wanting, saying we have to have an enduring solution, which doesn't mean going back to tariffs, sanctions, restrictions on everything, on the nuclear program. We're breaking out of that and you have to accept it, or else there will be a certain amount of economic pain that will follow for these. These are preconditions, the 10 points. They're not just, oh, let's talk about nuclear things now. And this is what I think will happen. I think this is, I mean, first of all, as far as I know, before I started talking to you now, I hadn't heard that the Iranian delegation had even left Tehran, because they said if it's not security for all, it's security for none. So Lebanon is part of the equation. If you don't accept the equation, no negotiations. If there are negotiations, I think, then I predict that what will happen is, seeing that this is going to play badly for Trump and for the White House in the lead up to the midterm elections, suddenly we'll have, yes, well, now we need to talk about enrichment. And, we want you to give back the 340 kilos. And then we'll talk about gradual lifting of sanctions. You can lift sanctions, a little bit by little, depending on your behavior, depending on your conduct. Maybe we'll lift a few more, maybe not. The Iranians are not going to buy that. Why should they? They've been through that so long with the JCPOA, when sanctions were supposed to, were sort of supposed to be lifted in certain areas. I remember at the time after Trump left the JCPOA, technically the Europeans were supposed to go on trading with Iran on the basis of the JCPOA, but that was stopped. So it was breached from the very beginning, the JCPOA, by the United States in the Euro 3, to be absolutely clear about it. So they're not going to accept, Vance coming and saying, yes, but, we have to make sure we can't allow you to have a nuclear weapon. And they're going to say, well, actually, we haven't got one. And we've always said, it's you that's pushing us towards a nuclear weapon, just as you did with North Korea. But we have no intention of doing that, and we can give undertakings, but not based on tariffs, sanctions, penalization, more siege. No, it's either we have an agreement or not. I don't think this is understood, and therefore I suspect that we will, in the not too distant future, we will find that Israel has resumed its attacks on Iran, and that then the United States will follow. And as I said to you, you will be doing this, largely putting American lives on the line, largely because it's part of the Netanyahu calculus for winning the election, which he must do, otherwise he goes to prison, because that's likely to be the consequence of his judgment in the court cases for corruption. So, I mean, is the United States leadership, as it is presently, I mean, I'm not talking about the United States in the bigger sense, but is it capable of doing this? And does it really have the agency to act, if you like, in a way that is going to curb Israel from demanding that the war, or provoking the war to continue by some exercise of power, further attacks in Gaza? I mean, by the way, the period for disarmament of Hamas ends, I think, today or tomorrow. So we'll probably see then not only Lebanon being attacked, but we'll see massive attack starting again in Gaza.